Hi guys, it's Miss Bergelson. I just wanted to introduce the project that Miss Manoli and I have come up with for you for e-learning, and it's having you guys write and illustrate your own children's books. I'm sure that you remember, I certainly do, children's books that were important to me when I was a kid, and I'm way older than you. I remember that Madeline is actually how I learned to read, because I remember I knew the story by heart, and then eventually I started to piece together like, oh, these sounds connect to these little images on the page, the words, and figured that out. And just other things in that story that really moved me. Like there was a thing about there's a crack on the ceiling that had the habit of sometimes looking like a rabbit. And I feel like that kind of really stayed with me and informs a lot of the way I look at the world and even the assignment that we gave you before. Also, Miss Manoli and I are both parents, and so have strong associations with books that we enjoyed reading to our kids that were not even around when we were little. So for instance, I'm sure you're familiar with the Mo Willems, the various series that he has. So I was a big fan of Elephant and Piggy, but there's also the Pigeon Bus ones. And he's a fun one to look at because different artists have such different ways of approaching children's books. And in his case, he's the author and the illustrator. And so his stories are very, very simple, and there's very few words per page. And the drawings themselves are very, very simple, but still extremely expressive and often laugh out loud funny, just because of the interesting take they have on relationships. And it's also really cool the way he sometimes changes the size of the text to sort of convey the story. Like if somebody, like when it's larger, we think of it louder. Like if somebody texts you in all caps, you kind of feel like they're screaming at you. I am also a big fan of Sandra Boynton's books. She has tons of them. And she also does like greeting cards and stuff. But she has, her certain characters that she uses again and again, and she tells funny little stories. This might have even been since you guys have outgrown picture books, but maybe if you have little siblings or little cousins or neighbors or something, it's all about how, imagination and using a box. And so the box isn't really a box. It's a race car or it's a rocket ship. But it's, again, really simple, but really sweet. And in this book, as in, not all the other ones, there's one page of text and then one page of image for every 2-page spread, which is something, some books keep that consistent, some books change that. So a book that's been around since I was a kid, Where the Wild Things Are, and I hope you're familiar with. It's a great book by Maurice Sendak, also writer, illustrator. So he starts out with text on one side, image on the other. And then as the story progresses and his room is turning into the jungle where the wild things are, the imagery starts to creep out of that one page and onto the other side until eventually the imagery, takes over the whole 2-page spread. And, and then there's one page that has no text at all. It's just images. So there's all kinds of great books. Some of my other favorites that I loved reading to my son were Giraffes Can't Dance, which has an author and a different illustrator, but they obviously work together really beautifully. And one thing I remember really clearly about this, and that I've noticed in a lot of children's books, is that oftentimes there's an image that's from either an aerial view or like a very unusual point of view. So that's something to kind of think about when you're creating your picture book. And again, how the size of the text, the size of the image, and the angle of the image really tells the story. So I love Llama Llama Red Pajama, and I had memorized that when my son was very little. But for you guys that know me, I can tend to be a little bit dramatic. And so I think when I used to read this page where Llama Llama is screaming for his mama, my son told me that it totally freaked him out when I read that. So he doesn't have fond memories of the book, but I love it. Anyway, the books that you are going to make, are the ones that we're assigning to you to make, are very, very simple. So it's going, and we're going to include all the links about how to lay your book out, and then actually how to make it in separate links and videos in the Google Classroom. But these are some old examples. So just so you can see, there's a title page, and then there's 3 2-page spreads. So you can choose to do it as text and image on both pages or not. And then there's going to be an about the author on the back. That's my dog crying in the background. Apologies. So here's one with an about the author on the end. You are going to be responsible for inventing your own characters and your own stories. So even if you love Elephant and Piggie, that's awesome. And you can be inspired by Mo Willems, but you can't just make another Elephant and Piggie book. Like, you have to create your own characters and your own story. Now, 6 pages is not a lot. So if some of you feel limited by that and you want to add in more pages, or you want to find, and we'll try to find for you also other bookmaking tutorials to make longer books, that is certainly welcome, but you don't have to feel stressed to do that. So I hope you're excited about this. I think it's really exciting because storytelling is so much, my dog's eating something. Barkley, no. Storytelling is so much a part of what we do. Sorry. As human beings, you know, we have stories read to us. We read to people. It's what TV is. It's what all this binge watching is that we find so reassuring sometimes. And it's a form of communication, and it's, I know reading is also like a form of self-soothing, and it's, you know, we have all this sort of time to kill now and all this isolation. It's a really nice way to stay connected. And you can think about, writing and illustrating a story for, you know, some kid that's stuck at home, and, you know, think about what would make them happy and what would be meaningful to them. And then what we're going to ask you to do next week is to actually show, like, do a little video of you reading and presenting your story. So that's that. Of course, feel free to reach out to us with questions, and check out the links in the Google Classroom that have like more, what are you doing, Barkley? More, you know, details and instructions and handouts and whatnot. Okay, thanks so much, guys. Bye.